have such stories with rostrum, and I like to shy away from them if I can. Patrick, I think you mentioned my name perfect. Thank you very much. But please just call me Yusoff. I'm very grateful for the organizer for inviting me to give a welcome and to open this workshop that will be taking place for the next 5 days. Where should I start? Let me make a few statements of facts before I go through some of the things that I want to share with you. Firstly is that I'm no Agri anything. I eat vegetables, yes. I try to make my rose plant grows nicely so that I can pluck the flower and give it to my wife sometime. And whenever I have some cuts, I'll just pluck from the aloe vera and just eat through. That's the whole thing I know about agriculture. So please forgive me if I don't talk too much about agriculture in my speech. Secondly is that the Newton Fund has been great, addition to our research and development funding in Malaysia, because in this case we have a 50-50 matching contribution from both countries. So UK government of course provide half, and then we match up the other half. 2 years ago, before we started this program, we had a sit down with most of the science community and decided that what are the focus that we're going to have for this funding. And then of course we can't do everything under the sun, and then find out that after 5 years that there are no results, no impact from this program. So we decided to sort of give it a bit of focus for Malaysia, and we decided that sustainable development and future cities should be the focus of our Newton Fund. And just for your knowledge, Oma is the first PhD recipient in Malaysia, so it is in his honor that we are putting the name Newton Oma. So that's one. Second is that maybe there are not too many Malaysians around, but really Malaysia's submission or proposal is the most among the 12 countries, if I'm not mistaken, from the Newton Fund. So it shows a great enthusiasm with regard to wanting to do research in Malaysia. So if you heard otherwise, the fact of the matter is that we have scientists and researchers who are really willing to work with other researchers from other countries and to make this work. So it's very proud whenever we get back from British Council and say that Malaysia has the most number of submission, whether in terms of the institutional linkages or transboundary research and grants. So that's where we are. It's still young. We are only into our second year, and we hope to see some impacts maybe by the time we end it in 2008. Now, this Newton Oma, I think, was a real drive by the two science advisors. I can't stop talking about Malaysia's science advisor, Professor Agri, who I think would have loved to be here and share some of his thoughts with you. He did that last week when we had this another program under the Newton funding for disaster risk reduction, and of course a few weeks before that was the Intergovernmental Panel for Biodiversity and Eco Services, where he spoke, and that's where I want to bring Yang YBhg Tun Jin into the picture, because during one of the during the launching of the program, a member of the UNDP, if I'm not mistaken, actually called for a standing ovation for Agri, because sometimes scientists are not that appreciated, and especially the work that he has done around the world may not be known to so many people. So he was this gentleman invited everybody to stand up, and Tun Jane was sitting beside me, and she was the first to actually stand up, and everybody was following and gave him a very very honourable standing ovation. And I thought he deserved that very much, and thanks to you, because in Malaysia you obviously need somebody to start, and then everybody will follow, and thank you for that. This program comes under what we call the Science to Action initiative. You see, the scientific community is sometimes very worried when government actually develop national economic programs, because in most cases, and we find it with concern that the science element may be missing from the economic development approach. So that's why we came up with this Science to Action initiative. Met the leader of the country and then told him that we need to have science to make sure that we don't only grow or develop up to 2020, but we need to grow beyond that. And the Science to Action initiative was actually the name for the National Science Transformation Program for the country. So in short, we call it Science to Action Initiative, or S2A initiative. And under this initiative, we think that there should be a focus on three main things. We call it the three pillars of the Science to Action. That is, one, governance is very, very key. You need to have science for governance. And in some cases, this has actually become what the two earlier speakers have mentioned about the interdisciplinary way of approaching problems and the likes. You see, in the past, governance was done through councils which represents biotechnology, ICT, and electrical and electronics, and they come in all sorts of forms, and they are working in silos. And sometimes the problem you have is that every council wants to have the Prime Minister to chair it. And he, in the S&T related council, he chairs about 10 councils. And you just imagine how this council will actually have time to meet and the likes. So what we said is that once the Science to Action initiative came on board, we said he should only chair two councils. One is the national one, which we eventually call it National Science Council, and the one is a Global Science Innovation Advisory Council, where he actually talk to other experts around the world once a year, so that we know that our plans are sort of aligned to the thinking of the global community. So that is in itself brings all the elements together. That means science should be multidisciplinary. Science not only should talk about its the knowledge, but also how it's being integrated into economy, into the social political issues. And sometimes when I think about this, I found science is at a disadvantage. Because if even you look at the economic development of a nation, the science and even agriculture is actually put as a very historical dinosaur kind of thing. You have done that, I think Professor mentioned, many thousand years ago. It was an industry 100, 200 years ago. But once the Industrial Revolution comes in, you find that the agriculture or the science element disappear. And somehow you would think that the country actually now grows from this industrial element, and agriculture only play is at best a secondary role. And that is also in the case of Malaysia. We look at the path of our economic development. The agriculture was very important in the 70s, and it came to the rescue during one of the financial crisis in the 80s, but that is as far as it goes. There's no mention about agriculture in technology or in industry and the likes. And in most also very sad is that the younger generations view agriculture as a poor man's career. It's a poor man's economy, because it's so rural, it's so unfashionable. It's not fashionable at all. It's working in the hot sun. That it is actually being equated to that anybody can do agriculture. So you have that problem. So I draw a parallel with the construction industry. It's the same. The construction industry has not changed for the last 50 years. Or even if you go back to the Egyptian pharaoh's time, they still do bricklayering. They layer one after another. And you look at the houses now being built, it's still the same. It's bricklayering one after another. And you hide all the deficiencies by plastering everything. So if you remove the plaster, you can see all the the not so good things. So this now becomes a big challenge of bringing this sector or this activity into the mainstream. You know, last year during the World Economic Forum, Charles Schwab, the president of World Economic Forum, actually introduced the fourth industrial revolution. That means it's going to get more industrialized than ever. And things like ICT will be playing a very, very big role. Looking at that perspective, we talk about the digital elements, we talk about IoT, we talk about all this robotics, you talk about automation, and you must find a way of how all these elements will be input into the agricultural sector. In Malaysia, we have issues too that we need to actually look at some of these development to become our solutions. So, agreed, technology may not be the only solutions, but technology may provide some of the solution. For example, we need to import so many foreign workers to actually work in that kind of industry. And basically, it's not a very popular work for the locals, in the hot sun and etc. That's why even in the construction industry, we have the same problem. So in the construction industry, what we are trying to do is bring a form of what we call off-site manufacturing. That means bring this work into a more comfortable environment like this dome, which is very cool, which is very comfortable, and etc. So even if you have to plant, even you have to do those work involving planting and etc., it should be brought into a nicer environment. And I think in many of the smart cities in the world, they are looking at agriculture being part of that environment. They have vertical planting schemes, and they have all sorts of new materials to become the source of nutrients for the plants, and etc. So we should not continue the traditional trajectory. We need to embrace some of the technology, but I'm also aware that many of the knowledge actually have been developed many years ago through our generations. You see, when I was in India about three weeks ago talking about smart cities and the likes, and I said that Malacca, where we are doing our project at the moment of smart cities, have been smart since the 14th century. It has all the elements of what smart cities are talking about today, about security, about multicultural social interaction, of comfort, ease, and the likes. And I was talking to many of the participants there, and they said, we do not want a smart city where we come into a room and we clap and the lights goes on, and when we leave the room it goes off. That is not what we meant by smart cities. Smart cities must blend all these elements that we want to achieve. Social interactions, our religious rights, and etc. should be made more easier for us when we talk about smart cities. And of course, the environmental zero carbon emission and the likes. So we need to actually look back at some of these traditional knowledge that we have, but we have to modernize our approach and mindset into this sector, into agriculture. So I think in that way, then we can make a very big transformation of this sector, and it becomes a very significant economic contributor to the country. I'd just like to repeat what Prof. Zakri will always say when he talks about science to action. He always say that whatever we do, if it doesn't result in creating more jobs for our people, if it doesn't result in improving or increasing our revenue, our income for the nation, then it doesn't mean anything. So even when we talk from the research and development perspective, we need to look at the end, that this actually whatever we do must result in these two things, and also must result in the well-being of our people and the people in the world. So I think on that note, just to share with you why Might is here at all. We stands for the Malaysian Industry Government Group for High Technology. I myself come from the aviation aeronautics background, but it is very important that we actually give a balanced treatment not only to high technology manufacturing, to services, but also agriculture as our third engine of growth for the country. So thank you very much for your attention, and I need to say the workshop is now open. Oh, it's open. Right. Thank you very much.